There's always that one person. When people ask, "So what are you doing for your birthday?" they answer, "Nothing. It's just another day." And instantly something feels off. People don't understand it. Some assume they're sad. Others think they're being difficult. Because in a world where birthdays are supposed to matter, not caring about it feels almost unnatural. But psychology suggests something very different. People who treat their birthday like a normal day aren't all the same. In fact, they usually fall into a few very specific psychological patterns. And each one reveals something deeper about how they experience meaning, attention, and themselves. And once you see these patterns, you start to realize this behavior isn't random at all. The first group didn't choose this. They learned it. At some point in their life, birthdays stopped feeling special. Maybe people forgot. Maybe expectations didn't match reality. Maybe the day felt smaller than it was supposed to. Imagine being a kid checking the clock, waiting for something to happen. A surprise, a moment, something that says this day matters, and nothing really does. No excitement. No moment that feels different from any other day. Now repeat that a few times. Eventually the brain adapts. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. When something consistently disappoints you, the brain lowers its expectations as a form of protection. Over time, the emotional response fades. Not because the person doesn't care, but because their brain learned that caring comes with a cost. So when they say, "It's just another day," it's not indifference, it's adaptation. A quiet decision the brain made long ago, that hoping hurts more than not caring. The second group looks completely different. They don't reject their birthday, they simply don't prioritize it. These are people whose attention is constantly occupied. Deadlines, responsibilities, endless things pulling at their mind. Their days don't feel like separate chapters. They feel like one continuous stream. Morning blends into afternoon, weeks blur into months. Sometimes they only realize their birthday has passed when someone else mentions it, and even then there's no strong reaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Psychologists often describe this as time blindness. When the brain is overloaded, it stops assigning importance to specific dates. Days blur together. Weeks pass quickly. And their birthday becomes just another point in a continuous timeline. Not ignored out of emotion, but filtered out by attention. You'll often see this in people who are always busy. People building something. People trying to keep everything together. They might even remember it, just not in a way that feels important. To them, stopping everything for one day feels less meaningful than just continuing forward. Because in their mind, progress matters more than pause. And their life simply feels bigger than it. Then there's the third group, the most misunderstood one. They didn't forget. They weren't disappointed, they just don't need it. These individuals don't rely on external events to feel important. Psychologists link this to internal validation. Their sense of self is not dependent on recognition, celebration, or social rituals. They don't need one day a year to confirm their value, because that feeling already exists internally. While others wait for celebration, these people already feel complete. They don't measure their worth based on attention. They don't rely on reminders to feel seen. In fact, for some of them, the idea of needing a special day feels unnecessary, almost artificial. And that creates a strange contrast, because society is built on shared rituals, birthdays, holidays, milestones, moments that say, this is when you're supposed to feel something. But these individuals don't follow that script. They define meaning on their own terms. And that can feel confusing for people who rely on those shared signals, because from the outside it can look like indifference. But from the inside, it's often stability. There's also another group that sits quietly between the others. They do care, but they've learned to lower expectations, because birthdays come with pressure. Expectations, plans, reactions, and sometimes those expectations don't get met. People don't show up the way you hoped. Messages feel generic. Moments feel forced. And instead of feeling connected, it can feel empty. So instead of risking that disappointment, they step away from the meaning entirely. If nothing is expected, nothing can go wrong. And that feels safer. It's not that the day has no meaning, it's that the emotional risk feels too high. So they reduce the importance of the day to protect themselves from that feeling. But even when people feel indifferent, the brain may still remember. Psychologists call this the anniversary effect. Certain dates carry emotional imprints, and each year the brain reactivates those patterns, often unconsciously. So even when someone says, it's just another day, there can still be a subtle emotional tone beneath it, a slight heaviness, a quiet sense of distance, something they can't fully explain because it doesn't come from today. It comes from how that day once felt. For some people, the issue isn't the birthday itself. It's the attention that comes with it. Being watched, being celebrated, being expected to react. Imagine a room where everyone turns toward you, waiting, not for who you are, but for how you respond. For certain personalities, this creates discomfort, because celebration can feel less like connection and more like performance. So instead of engaging with it, they minimize it. Not because they don't value relationships, but because they prefer authenticity over attention. There is also a positive side to this pattern. People who don't attach meaning to birthdays are often less dependent on external triggers for happiness. Psychologists describe this as stepping off the hedonic treadmill, that constant cycle of this moment will make me happy, only for that feeling to fade, then be replaced by the next thing. Instead, these individuals experience something different, a quieter form of stability. They don't rely on a specific day to feel good about themselves. Their identity doesn't fluctuate based on events, which can lead to a more consistent and often more grounded sense of contentment. But not all indifference is the same. Sometimes it reflects independence. Other times it reflects protection. Some individuals avoid celebrating not because they don't need it, but because they've learned not to expect it. Because expecting something meaningful and not receiving it can hurt more than not expecting anything at all. Psychologists refer to this as contingencies of self-worth. When self-value feels uncertain, reducing expectations becomes safer than risking disappointment. So the real question isn't whether someone cares, it's why they don't. In the end, it was never really about the birthday. It's about how a person relates to meaning, to attention, to expectations. For some, it's just another day. For others, it reveals something much deeper. And maybe the better question isn't why some people don't celebrate, but why everyone else feels like they should. Because what we call normal is often just something the majority agrees on. And the moment someone steps outside of that, it feels strange. Even when it isn't. If this felt a little too accurate, you're not alone. And no, you're not broken. You just experience things differently. And there's probably more about you that psychology can explain. So if you want to understand yourself on a deeper level, you might want to watch the next video. It might explain more than you expect.